Hello and welcome to Azur Lane Meta. If after this video you want to help support the channel, please check out my affiliate store at kit.co/AzurLaneMeta. Welcome back, guys. It's Thursday, and you know what that means. It is update day, and we are here with a data mine for the Swirling Cherry Blossoms rerun event. Now, normally this is the point in the video where I go over the patch notes. However, since I went over pretty much everything over here in this 1-minute speed video, I won't go too in-depth into the patch notes specifically. However, there's one thing that I want to mention that snuck its way into the patch notes that was not mentioned in the stream and thus didn't make it into the other video. Starting on July 1st, so not this Thursday technically, we will get the FuMO 25 radar that will be permanently added to the core data shop. And since we have a data mine on what that item is, let's talk about that item first, and then we'll get into the ships second. The FuMO 25 radar is an auxiliary equipment that can be equipped with light cruisers, heavy cruisers, battleships, aviation battleships, and battle monitors. It gives 29 accuracy stat and 26 firepower stat at plus 10. If you were to take it up to plus 13, that would give you 35 accuracy stat and 32 firepower stat. It does not have any special effects. So basically, this is the gold equipment version of the fire control radar. Previously, that item's highest rarity was purple. However, this item is not that impactful since we already have the high performance fire control radar in research of PR3. That item actually gives more firepower and accuracy stat than this new FuMO 25 radar. Not to mention, it also has the cooldown reduction. However, this new item is not completely outclassed. The high performance fire control radar cannot be equipped on a light cruiser or a heavy cruiser. Thus, if you wanted to equip a firepower vanguard ship like a light cruiser or a heavy cruiser, this item might be relevant for you. It extends the DPS that a firepower boat can do in your vanguard. This is more relevant for PvE, but it can help in speeding up some of your grinds. Of course, this can't be equipped by a destroyer, so Kitakaze, Suzutsuki, Tashkent, you're out of luck. And with that, let's get into the ships. We only have 2 new ships and 1 retrofit. We'll start with the retrofit Kasumi first. Kasumi was from the gacha the first time this event ran. She was a fan favorite, and she actually has quite a bit of potential. She has emergency maneuvers that give her survivability, and her Fu and Friends skill allows her to boost all IJN vanguards. She is another ship other than Noshiru that can actually boost Ibuki. However, she fell in the pitfalls of having terrible stats as most elite destroyers do. So with this retrofit, let's see if she has overcome some of those downsides. Retrofits always increase those stats, so let's take a look. Of course, she gets stat boosts across the board. The 165 HP though isn't going to make her much more survivable, but where I am looking that is super important is that torpedo stat. She is a torpedo destroyer, and that will be where the majority of her DPS comes from. 586 torpedo stat actually puts her as the second highest torpedo boat in the game, behind only Shigure. That is super impressive. This puts her in the top echelon of the torpedo destroyer. Of course, one important thing to note is if we look at her torpedo weapon efficiency, it's only 155% now. All of the top torpedo destroyers like Ainami, Tanakaze, and Shigure all have 165% in that category. That is 10% less damage. So even though she boosts her own torpedo stat by 15%, torpedo stat does not directly translate to torpedo damage like the weapon efficiency would. So this stat boost will move her into the upper echelon of torpedo damage based destroyers. And just like them, she'll fall still to the same pitfalls, which is they are basically one shot and done. They are not very survivable or versatile. Now let's look at her updated skills. She gets no new skills, and emergency maneuvers is left untouched. However, her Fu and Friends now gets an updated version. The new skill triggers when there are 2 ships in the vanguard rather than before when there were 3. This doesn't make it any stronger, but it does give her more flexibility in the types of fleets that you can run her in. For example, you can now put her in oil efficient grinding fleets, whereas before you really couldn't. The 15% boost to IJN Vanguard torpedo stat is exactly the same as it was before, but we get 2 new parts of this skill. A self damage reduction by 5%. This is actually minuscule, especially on a ship that has like 2164 HP. That's not really going to make her take more than like 1 extra shot, which there are so many shots flying around. It is nice, but it's not particularly going to bring her up too much. The second part that gets added is actually a little bit more interesting, a 70% chance that she fires a barrage every 20 seconds. This barrage actually has 8 torpedoes in it, and they have 130% modifiers against heavy armor. It also has HE ammo, and actually is pretty good if it procs. However, it is only every 20 seconds. That's slow, and it's only a 70% chance. This barrage does add a lot of potential DPS to her, which actually with her new top tier torpedo stat is going to be pretty good. However, it is still really RNG, and she's still not that survivable. Overall, this ship went from being a waifu over meta, only use if you like her ship, to a usable ship. You can use her with Ibuki, and that's pretty much where she's going to rely in terms of where she can fit a niche role. She's not going to make any sweeping meta changes out of this though, and honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed in it. I expected more. However, she is by no means bad. Use her if you like her. She can now be justified in certain fleets, like Noshiru, Ibuki, Kasumi fleet that I mentioned earlier. That new retrofit skin is S tier though. Next up, we are going to talk about the Elite Destroyer Shirayuki from the Fubuki class. As Elite Destroyers go, stat-wise, she's bad. I mean, she's even worse than Naganami, another torpedo-based elite destroyer. So let's move into the skills and hope that they will redeem her. Her first skill gives herself a 10% torpedo stat boost. However, this just brings her back up to normal. Actual torpedo-based boats actually give even up to 15%, and she's only giving 10%. This is not that great. If there are other ships alive in the Vanguard, increase all Vanguard ships' firepower and accuracy by 10%. This is interesting because it boosts the whole Vanguard, including herself, but it does boost firepower and accuracy. She's definitely not good at either of those. And given that she's especially squishy, even more than Kasumi, bringing her as a buffing ship is not particularly something that you really want to be doing. This is somewhat niche. I think you could probably find better firepower boosts. At that point, just take Aurora, the oldest ship in the game. The second skill allows her to deal 10% more damage versus destroyer enemies. I don't know what to say about this. It doesn't boost anyone else in the Vanguard, it's only herself, and she is a torpedo-based ship, so you won't be using her against destroyer enemies anyway. You're going to be using your firepower boats instead. Pretty weak first half of this skill. The second half of this skill has a 30% chance to launch an additional wave of torpedoes. This is actually interesting. This is basically like Ranger's quick takeoff skill. Looks to me like there's a potential of having this infinitely loop. Obviously, it's a low percent chance. This could be really fun for some super big torpedo memes, and the theoretical DPS of this is astronomical. However, in practice, this is not very good. Shirayuki is a waifu over meta ship with a cool little niche of having potentially a ton of torpedo damage in the 1 in 100 battles that you do. But she looks like Pecora, so everyone's going to want to get her anyway. So last but not least, today we have the SR destroyer Kazagumo, a Yugumo class destroyer that's sisters with Naganami. So with everyone else in this event, it seems like we will be comparing her with Naganami, the go-to torpedo destroyer right now. So stat-wise, I was surprised to see her have less HP and firepower. She does have more torpedo stat and reload stat though. For good measure, the higher rarity does boost her 5% in all efficiencies, the DD gun, the torpedoes, and the anti-air guns. Stat-wise, she should perform similarly to her sister, so let's look at her skills to see if she stands out. Her first skill gives her a plus 5% to her own torpedo stat. Given Naganami gives a plus 15% to her own torpedo stat, Naganami will have a higher torpedo stat than Kazagumo. Not off to a great start. Kazagumo also gives a plus 15% to her reload. She already had a pretty good reload, so this means she's going to be firing faster. Finally, for this first skill, whenever her class barrage triggers, lower the self-torpedo reload time by 3 seconds. Wow. To put in perspective, she will have the same class barrage as Naganami that fires every 10 times the main battery is fired. This is just a straight 3 seconds. That's a lot of time off of a reload. A standard torpedo will fire about 20 to 25 seconds. You can get under that with a good reload like hers, and she also boosts her own reload, and then she gets to reduce 3 seconds on top of that. This means she's going to be firing torpedoes very quickly. This definitely makes the case for using a barrage gun on her already. Of course, we want her to fire very quickly. She has basically no firepower damage she's giving anyhow. She principally is a torpedo damage based ship. This is actually a very good skill. Gives her a lot of options in PvE with longer battles. The longer the battle it is, the more advantage she gets off of her reload that gives her extra shots of her torpedoes. For her second skill, she increases the carriers or light carriers damage done by 15%. Doesn't stack with similar skills. Wow. Okay, so they basically gave her the carrier boosting damage skill of Potter. This is very interesting, meaning that she's going to be competing with Potter, Yaguri, and all of the same ships like that. Ariake, all those ships that have this skill, she is now a carrier booster. This is, of course, actually really good considering that we are going to be getting a PR carrier for the IJN faction, but this is really strange to put on this ship. So she's going to be a carrier booster? This actually probably takes over her identity. Like, she felt like a torpedo destroyer after looking at the stats and the first skill, but now she's a buffer for carriers. This second skill won't stack with those other carrier damage boosting skills, but it is not the same skill. It actually has more parts to it. So let's get into those. Every fourth launch of torpedoes heal the lowest HP carrier or light carrier for 10% of its HP. If the ship is a carrier, heal for an additional 5%, which is 15% total. This is limited to once per battle. What? So she's a healer now? She's a front row healer. This ship just keeps changing identities as I read more of her skills. This obviously only heals a carrier or a light carrier. Hopefully you're targeting a carrier. This is really cool for a mob fleet, actually. This ship feels like a mob fleet ship. It can just dish out a ton of torpedoes. They're not super high damage, but she can dish out a lot of them. She boosts your carriers and she heals your carriers. Overall, of the 3 new ships, if you count Kasumi as a new ship, at least her retrofit is, I think Kazagumo is the strongest one and should be the one that older veteran players should target. In terms of the event as a whole, for players who have never played this event before, the best ship in this event is definitely No Shiru. You have to make sure you get your hands on her if you don't have her already. She is amazing. Ryoho is also a really good ship. She is a single target healer. Obviously, she's a much better healer than Kazagumo, who is locked. So if you do not have a reliable healer like you missed Perseus, this is a great chance to pick up one that's better than the standard unicorn. Nothing too great to grind here, so just get ready for PR4, which is coming in July. I'll have that data mine out on this channel as soon as I know anything, so make sure you subscribe to this channel to get notified when that video does come out. I will probably be streaming this event later today on Twitch if you want to watch me go through this event, and if you have any questions, you can ask them there. Thank you guys for watching, take care, and until next time, have a great day.